Welcome back to the show. I had a lot of people come up to me recently during the storm and ask how I have little Johnny on Wednesdays and yet now she won't give me Johnny back because of the storm. Time sharing. That's a word that you hear a lot when it comes to family law, time sharing of the children. What do you do with time sharing when you have a hurricane or an emergency like we had around here last week? Who better to ask than Erin Morse, family law attorney. Erin, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. So how does that work? Because when you have a time sharing plan, obviously mom gets kids some days, dad gets kids other days. Yet, let's say they're at mom's house, supposed to go back to dad's on Wednesday, yet we have a hurricane rolling through and mom's like, I'm not bringing them. How does that work?
So if it's safe to travel, you know, some places never lost power. I never lost power, but some places it wasn't safe to travel. My mom's house is flooded. That's really going to be a bit of more of your determining factor is it safe and could you comply? Because the risk that you run by not complying with your court order is contempt. Right, which you could go to jail, you could be ordered to pay attorney's fees or something like that, but if you were unable to comply with that court order, you wouldn't have to. So it's really going to be a matter of figuring out what's safe or what would work. But if you think that the children should stay with you because you're just the better parent, they're going to come for you for that.
Is that right? How loose? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just commenting.
How loose are these rules? So let's say I do get the kids every other weekend, and then one weekend the mom says, you know what, I'm just going to keep them this weekend. Can mom get in trouble in that situation, or is it like, okay, once or twice it's okay?
No, she could get in trouble just the one weekend keeping the children if the two parties don't agree. Now, if the two of you would have agreed to something like that, that's outside of your parenting plan, that's fine. So if you agree to it, it's okay. If you don't agree, that's contempt. That's where you'll have sanctions and fees. But it's not contempt if you don't take them to court and enforce it.
Believe it or not, we're almost upon the holiday season. It's the year's gone by quickly.
Fun.
How does it work with traveling? Let's say that I want to go to Tennessee and visit my family, and I want to take the kids out of state. What are the rules when it comes to traveling with children?
So if you have a final judgment, it's going to be in there, whether you can travel outside of the state with the children. Generally, yes, you can travel outside of the state with your children as long as you inform the other parent of where you're going, and it's not going to impact the other parent's time sharing. So those are your general guidelines. But if you want to travel, it's most likely that during your time sharing, you could travel.
Unfortunately, we've got, 50% of marriages end in divorce still? Is it 50%, right? 50%. And when that divorce happens, especially if you have children, you do not want to go to this courtroom on your own. You need to have a family law attorney like Erin by your side. If you have questions for Erin right now, she will answer them literally right now. 321-282-1055. And what about attorney's fees too? So you hear all these stories on TMZ.com or whatever. Not that I ever go to that website, of course.
Me either.
But good.
Never watch them on TV all the time.
You hear the stories about someone famous. They had to pay $100,000 in attorney's fees for the ex-wife's attorney. How do we determine who pays the attorney's fees in these divorce cases?
So every state's obviously going to be different, and California has their law. So if you're talking about a celebrity divorce, that's probably where it was happening, was in California. But in Florida, attorney's fees are considered similarly to support. So if one party has the need and the other party has the greater ability to pay, you can seek attorney's fees. You can also seek attorney's fees under a theory of sanctions for contempt, like we were discussing earlier.
So
what if you're not married? Does the other person have to pay for the attorney fee?
You don't have to pay for it's not automatic, right? Mm-hmm. You file a case and immediately they write the check to the other attorney. You'd have to go to court and prove it up or have an agreement.
Got it.
But you could have a good claim. And if you're not married and it's a paternity action, the same rule under a different statute, they kind of speak to each other and recite themselves, but under the paternity statute, the need and ability analysis or the need for attorney's fees seen as support is something that exists there in paternity too.
Got it.
Family law cases are obviously very emotionally charged, and I think there are times where you probably have clients who are paying enough as is, yet the ex-wife or the ex-husband comes in and files something asking for more that just is nonsense, and no judge is ever going to award that. Right. How do attorney's fees work in that situation if a judge says, there's no way you're ever going to get this anyway? Will they look at that and when it comes to awarding attorney's fees?
So not quite that simply. Okay. You'd really have to go through a sanctions if it was truly not a meritorious claim. But merely winning on a motion to dismiss doesn't entitle you to attorney's fees.
I see.
Even if I think it should.
We don't have debtor's prison, obviously, in this country, thanks to the Boston Tea Party and throwing the tea into the Boston Harbor, thankfully. We don't have debtor's prison.
Right.
However, I have seen times, I know you have recently, where maybe someone was ordered by the judge to pay a certain fee, they don't do it, and end up in jail. How can that happen?
So we were telling the story earlier. A former husband was ordered to pay alimony. He didn't pay alimony for a number of years, so that can go on, and until you enforce it, you don't get that money. So through this enforcement procedure, which was multiple hearings, I won, and he started to pay his alimony and had to pay my attorney's fees for that cause of action. So that's a good example of when your attorney's fees would get paid by the other party. Well, he wasn't paying them. So I went to court, and part of the analysis on if you'll be held in contempt is if you had the ability to pay. You know, he started mouthing off.
Always a great idea in the courtroom.
Yeah,
That's
smart.
right. You should mouth
Absolutely.
off to the judge. Deputies there jingling the. He was just like ching, ching,
ready to go.
ching. And he said he can't pay. He wasn't going to pay. So the judge looks at him and goes, "You have a banking app on your phone?" Because I had already received the right to look at his banking app to know if he has the ability to pay. And he goes, "Unlock your phone, unlock your banking app,
Wow.
and hand me your phone."
Yikes.
So the deputy takes the phone to the judge, and the judge is there for a few minutes scrolling. I could feel him sweating, right? He's on the other side, but I could feel him sweating. So the judge goes, "I'm finding that you have the ability to pay. You have the present ability to pay. Attorney Morse, open your payment portal, right, to take a credit card." He won't do it. He stands up and he's like, "I'm never going to pay. You're going to put me in jail. I'll never pay. I'll be in jail forever," right? He did not want to pay me. He dislikes me a lot. So the judge goes, "Okay, well, we'll take you to jail." I swear the exchange happened 7 times. "Are you going to pay? You could pay. You could not go to jail. I'm going to put you in jail." And he said he wasn't going to pay. In jail he went.
Right there.
Right there,
Nice.
from the
Wow.
courtroom. Drop your stuff, you gotta go. So then 3 days later, he pays and he's let out of jail. So
I imagine your client's going to leave you a positive review on that case, I hope, on Google, huh?
Yeah,
That's a
right?
very happy client, I'm sure.
That's right, that's right.
I've heard so many stories about angry ex-spouses who were, "Okay, I will give you the 10 grand, and they go to the bank and get it all in pennies. Have you ever seen that happen?
I have
And can
not.
you do that?
Yes,
No?
it's not illegal, right?
Right.
In general, we try to avoid that. This is why even if you think you can agree to something, you really do want an attorney, and you specify the form and method of payment by cashier's check, by direct transfer. You know, we typically don't put cash to avoid that kind of storyline of dude paying his child support in the wheelbarrow full of pennies, right? We don't want that guy.
Absolutely.
So I like the cashier's check, direct transfer, or through the disbursement unit directly from their check if it's support.
You know, again, very emotionally charged area of law,
Oh,
family
yeah.
law,
Oh, yeah.
and you hear a lot about leverage and threats, and I'm going to turn you into the IRS, or I'm going to throw myself against the wall and pretend like you hit me. Happens all the time in family law.
It does.
How do we go through that process and ensure that doesn't happen?
Well, I haven't seen very frequently where this reporting to the IRS
Mm-hmm.
or something like that happens and it's successful. I think because as soon as the IRS or someone knows that you're in the middle of a divorce, what they do is they're like, right, okay, I don't even want to listen to this, right? My husband is,
Yes.
you know, because also, are you also complicit? If you signed those IRS papers and he was breaking the law in the IRS, did you just report yourself? So, you know, consider the blowback if you're the person who wants to behave that way. But to protect yourself from it, of course, we have the legal system. And, you know, the domestic violence issues, they really can come about. We
Of
saw
course.
everything that happened with Johnny Depp and how that unfolds and continues to unfold. Somehow it's not over. I don't know.
Why do we become so childish when it comes to divorce? It's crazy, isn't it?
I don't know. And if I had that answer, I think I could be like president of the world.
Yeah, you probably could.
I think I would be like how I become president.
I know you represent both men and women. You don't
Yeah.
focus on either.
No.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, thanks.
Everyone that I would ever talk to that has hired you is always very happy. So
Well, I appreciate
You're doing
that.
something right, that's for sure.
We're trying.
Erin
right?
Morse, if you have any questions about family law, your children, how much do I have to pay for child support? I would give Erin a call right now, 321-282-1055. When we come back, I think this is a very interesting question that a lot of people do not know the answer to. You've been charged with a crime. You go down, you go through the phone book, you go on Google, and you hire a criminal defense attorney. You go to their office, and they say, okay, what's up? Do you tell them the truth, or do you not tell them the truth? It's a very interesting question that we're going to answer after this quick break as Behind the Law continues.